Thank you for joining Pioneer. I'm Chris with Norman Public Library Central, and this is the 22nd video in our series on the Swift computer programming language. In our previous lesson, we learned how to create our own protocol. We created a protocol with two functions, and we applied it to two different classes, book and DVD. We then created an array of lendable objects and saw that we could apply one of our functions from lendable to each one of those objects. Your challenge was to add a third function to this protocol and then implement it in your classes. Here's my solution. I've added the function getLendingPeriod. It returns an integer that will be the number of days that you're allowed to check out each one of these items. Then, in each of my classes, I implement the getLendingPeriod function. For example, for book, I return the number 21, and for DVD, I return the number 7. Today, we'll look at a different way of approaching this problem. If we implement it using a protocol, we have to write almost exactly the same function multiple times. Computer programmers never like to do the same thing more than once. So we'll learn today how we can use subclasses to reduce the amount of code we have to write. Take a look. I've provided you with the starter code you see on your screen in lesson 22-subclasses.swift, available from the Pioneer Library System website. You have a base class called Lendable that implements checkout and return book. And this time we actually did implement those functions. It doesn't provide any additional information about what a lendable object might be, but it provides the ability to check out and return a book. We're going to call this our base class. We're then going to create subclasses from that base class. It looks just like conforming to a protocol. But in this case, the Swift compiler isn't giving me any warnings at all because this is perfectly valid code. Book exists and implements the checkout and return book functions. So I don't actually need to do anything here if all my book needs to provide is checkout and return. But probably my book should have some additional pieces of information. And maybe even its own function. We can also implement a DVD in much the same way. But a DVD probably doesn't have an author, so we'll list the director instead. In the Swift and small bytes function, I've already created an array of lendables, but I haven't put anything in it yet. So let's add a couple of things to our array. So I've added a book and a DVD, and let's add a second book. Of course, this code isn't very useful because I haven't given my books or my DVD titles or any other information, but we would worry about that later. In my array, I can go through each one of the items in my library and I can run the checkout function. Remember, checkout is a function provided by our base class. If, however, I knew that my item was a book and I said I would like to read that book, I can't call readBook because readBook is not part of the lendable class. If I want to see if my item is a book and read it if it is, I need some additional code. Remember the as operator? So I can cast my item to book. Now, let's check to see if that worked. And if it did work, now I have an item called my book, and I can read the book. I'm taking an item that is of type lendable, and I am checking to see if it can be cast to book using the as operator. If that cast succeeds, then I call read book. If that cast fails and returns nil, this statement will never execute. Your challenge is to add the ability for your lendable class to provide information about how long each item can be checked out. Good luck!